US President Donald Trump has been imposing a series of unequal trade agreements on other countries, including longtime US allies, that hurt their economies in order to benefit the US economy. A good example of this is South Korea. Now, for many decades, South Korea has been one of the closest allies of the United States. In fact, South Korea has been militarily occupied by the US for over 70 years. And Trump has imposed an unequal treaty on Korea in which the US will impose 15% tariffs on Korean exports, but Korea is not allowed to retaliate and put tariffs on US exports. But that's not all. Trump has been humiliating Korea, and the US immigration agency, ICE, carried out a raid against a major Korean factory in Georgia and detained more than 300 South Korean workers in humiliating circumstances, putting handcuffs on them and treating them like criminals. This has outraged people in South Korea from across the political spectrum, from the left to the right. Media outlets have been condemning this abuse of South Korean workers and portraying their treatment as those of prisoners of war, depicting Trump as an aggressive tyrant. And this whole scandal is also deeply hypocritical because Trump has claimed that he wants to re-industrialize the US, but he's now attacking foreign investors who have been building factories in the US. The Financial Times noted that the major South Korean companies Hyundai and LG already invested $20 billion in this factory in Georgia, and they had plans to invest another $20 billion. This is why a South Korean government told the Financial Times that the U.S. has put these South Korean companies in a, quote, impossible position, end quote, and as the FT wrote, quote, successive U.S. governments push them to invest billions of dollars in reviving American industry while refusing to facilitate short-term working visas for projects to be completed on time, end quote. And this article interviewed the head of research at the Korea International Trade Association, who said, quote, the U.S. government is two-faced. It is asking Korea to invest more in the U.S. while treating Korean workers like criminals, even when it is well aware that they are needed for these projects to happen, end quote. And that is because the U.S. does not have the skilled workers who know how to actually build these high-tech factories and create these high-tech manufactured goods. But instead of training American workers to be technicians and engineers to work in and help to design these factories, the Trump administration is doing the exact opposite. Trump signed an executive order to abolish the Department of Education. So the result of Trump's very aggressive policies is that, one, the U.S. is not re-industrializing. He's not bringing back manufacturing jobs. The contrary is happening. And two, Trump is alienating longtime U.S. allies like Japan and South Korea that, again, remain militarily occupied by the U.S., and even they are now looking to diversify their foreign relations, and they're improving their relations with China and trading more with China as their people domestically are outraged by the blatant U.S. attacks on their sovereignty. And in order to discuss this in further detail, I have the privilege of being joined today by the renowned economist Michael Hudson.
Well, the United States threatened to impose very heavy tariffs at 25% on Korea, which, of course, would just block its export to the United States and cause mass unemployment there, which would have led to the Korean government falling. Well, the United States insisted that Korea shift its automobile production away from employing Koreans in Korea and to the United States. So it pressed Hyundai to invest over $20 billion to make a factory in Georgia. Well, as the whole world has seen in the last week, the immigration service somehow blocked this. Korea said, well, it takes 2 or 3 years to build this factory. We're going to employ American labor to make manufacturers, but we don't want this southern labor to end up making the Hyundai automobiles look like the Boeing airplanes that are made in the non-unionized southern production plants. So we're going to, it turns out that part of America's deindustrialization has been to stop almost all the vocational education in the United States for engineering, for creating new how do you engineer and create a factory? That's not something that's taught in the United States because factories are being dismantled and turned into gentrified housing, not production facilities.
And turned into Amazon warehouses.
Yes.
To sell products that were made in China and other Asian economies. And then the deindustrialized factories in the Midwest, they're just sitting there, so Amazon buys them up.
That's right. Well, at any rate, Korea said, well, we're going to send the contractors that have been building our factories in Korea over to the United States, and we're going to be sending our skilled labor over. They're used to how to you set up a plant and its machinery and design it so that it can be run efficiently once it goes into production using American labor. We have to set up the plant because if you don't set it up initially in a very rational way that is free of cutting corners, Boeing style, that is done efficiently, then you're going to have problems that are going to vastly increase the cost of production and redos later on. Well, this week, the United States and Trump is trying to get brownie points politically by hating foreigners. So far, he's hated the undocumented immigrants. Hispanics, the immigration authorities, ICE, have been just arresting Hispanics, grabbing them, even if they're American citizens or were born here. They're grabbed and put in chains and sent to relocation camps. Well, all of this was done to Koreans. Handcuffs, leg irons, totally shackled and arrested on the grounds that their work visas had expired, or their work visas said they were here for business meetings. Well, the Koreans government had been arguing with the Biden administration. Can't you open the visas so that we can have, we do want to invest in the United States, but can't you give us visas so we can have our skilled labor and our staff set up production facilities? The Biden administration said, well, we're just not going to impose, the Congress is unwilling to give any law that gives foreigners equality with the United States. You are not only inferior, you're the yellow peril. So, of course, we can't give you the special concessions we've given Australians. They're white people. They're English speakers. You're not. So we're not going to rewrite the laws to say, yes, you can move your skilled labor here. You're who you are. But we're just not going to enforce the law because, of course, we realize that you're going to have your engineers and your skilled labor set up the facilities here that we're insisting that you do so that you can employ American labor, not your own labor. So you can increase American employment at the cost of your own unemployment, and so that you can hurt your economy by helping our economy.
Yeah, Michael, this is also what happened with TSMC, which is this major Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturing corporation. They produce the majority of the world's most advanced cutting-edge chips. And the US government wanted to force TSMC to move its most advanced capital equipment to the US to invest to create factories in Arizona. And the US did force TSMC to do so, starting under Trump and continuing under Biden. And TSMC has invested billions of dollars making these factories in Arizona. And then they realized there were no skilled workers in the US who knew how to actually use this equipment, because we're talking about the most cutting edge technology in making semiconductors. So Taiwan sent over entire families of workers from TSMC. So what South Korea has been doing is not necessarily unique. And I would not be surprised to see that Trump starts going after other industries with these skilled workers. So the US won't have any skilled workers.
This is exactly the problem. The many generations of skilled workers, machine workers, engineers, designers, have all retired as a result of old age. They've and nobody has been trained to take their place because America's decided the way to make money is by de-industrializing, not by industrializing. Let's make money financially. And if we're not going to industrialize, what's the point of training skilled labor? Because there are not going to be any factories for them to work in. So this is the result of a long-term neoliberal financialization of the United States economy. And Trump didn't just ignored all of this. He thought, well, employing American labor, just any American labor can do any job. You don't need an education. And in fact, especially you don't need an education if we're abolishing the education department. And if we're finding we don't want to educate the kind of racial and ethnic people who become manual skilled laborers, because for the last 2 centuries, who've been America's skilled blue industrial laborers? Immigrants have been the key to all of this from the 19th century, early 20th century. And if you're going to oppose immigrants who said, yes, we're going to do all the dirty jobs to in order to be able to live here and to make a new life in America, we'll work at the construction industry, we'll work as home care workers, we'll do the manual labor jobs, not middle class, but we'll be wage earners, just blue collar workers that the Americans don't want to do, because the Americans want to all be middle class, as if somehow middle class means not manual labor, not industrial, but managerial professional class. Well, that's the corner into which U.S. Society has painted itself. And that's what you're right. The Taiwanese factory is certainly a case in point. And it's increasing the cost of production and making the Taiwanese worry that, how are things going to work out when other countries, Korea or Japan or Europe, Germany, make an American affiliate here producing, this affiliate becomes a hostage. And the United States can essentially, if there's a policy disagreement over Cold War stance, which economic bloc are you going to be loyal to? The American bloc or the SCO BRICS bloc? Well, they can do. They're holding the European investments here hostage, while the European or Japanese or Korean investors have lost the production facilities that they've now offshored in the United States. Well, for years, Korea had wanted the same kind of treatment that I think the United States has been giving Taiwan, and realized that, yes, we'll let the Taiwanese come in because we're hoping that somehow we can have its leaders agree to fight China to the last Taiwanese. We would love to see Taiwan become the Asian Ukraine, fighting China, being like a insect bothering it on the corner, and end up being wiped out. That's too bad, but at least it'll drain China. Well, you've seen the result of all of this is that all the Korean press and the American press made a big thing. How can all of these workers were brought here thinking that the United States would say, well, that part of the agreement of our investing in America is we're supplying the labor, and now they're put in shackles. Trump reversed the stance and said, okay, now you can remain here if you want. But every Korean worker who'd been handcuffed and put on the plane, saying, we don't want you here, and they were subject to all sorts of racial attacks. They said, we don't want to stay in the United States. We don't want to stay in the South. We didn't realize how they felt about people who were not white. And they all insisted in going back to Korea, refusing to come to the United States. Only one Korean worker chose to remain here. Well, the question is, how will Korea go from here and convince other workers to submit to the degrading treatment that they get in the United States?
By the way, Michael, did you see this chart that was published in the Financial Times? It was a survey asking Americans if they thought that the U.S. would be better off if more Americans worked in manufacturing, and 80% of Americans said yes, and Republicans, even more than 80%, said that the U.S. would be better off working in manufacturing. But then they asked a follow-up question: would you personally be better off if you worked in a factory? And only around 20% of Americans said that they would be better off working in a factory, because they don't want to actually work in a factory. They want to work with an email job in an air-conditioned office where they don't have to, be standing on an assembly line every single day. So obviously, pretty much everyone agrees that the U.S. should re-industrialize, but getting people to actually work in those factory jobs is going to be difficult given the shortage of not only skilled labor, but the shortage of people willing to do this work. So Trump says he wants to reindustrialize the U.S., but he also wants to deport the immigrants who would be most likely to work in the factories that need to be built to reindustrialize the U.S.
Well, that's what I was trying to say. It's not really an economic issue so much as a cultural issue of status. People think that it's low status to work as in an industrial job, that's working class, not middle class. And what the American political discussion doesn't realize is that the middle class people are also wage earners. There isn't any middle class. The middle class is still part of the wage earning class. Well, that's what the Democratic Party and its whole political social engineering has tried to dissolve. It's tried to create an identity politics where there's every kind of identity, every kind of way of subdividing identities, every identity except being a wage earner.
Except class. There is no working class anymore. There's no discussion of class politics in the U.S.
Yes.
Which is how you can have a so-called populist who is a billionaire, Donald Trump, who fills his administration with a dozen billionaires, including the head of the Treasury is a billionaire hedge fund manager from Wall Street, Scott Bessent, who worked for the liberal billionaire, the Democratic billionaire, George Soros. But apparently that's not a scandal because they're all part of a big club of billionaires. And yet they portray themselves as the populist party who's, fighting for workers. It's so crazy. I mean, and the Democratic Party doesn't do anything to actually serve working people because neither party actually wants to talk about class politics and the billionaires who fund and control both parties.
It's not simply that the Republicans and the billionaires have attracted the working class. The Democrats have driven the working class away. This is not a Republican attraction of labor. It's the Democrats saying, if you're a worker, a wage earner, we don't want you in our party. If you're someone who wants universal health care, and like Bernie Sanders, get out of our party. If you're someone who wants to raise a living wage, well, you're, I'm afraid, below the status of the people that we're looking for in the professional managerial class. We don't have any alternative in the Democratic Party. And there cannot be, just to speak for myself, I don't see how there can be any economic progress or political or social progress in the United States until the Democratic Party, as it exists, is dissolved and ceases to be what the Supreme Court has said. You're controlled by the stockholders in the Democratic National Committee. They are in charge of the party, not the voters. As you can see, the political fight to block the socialist Democratic candidate for mayor of New York, Mamdani.
Zohar Mamdani.
You can see the hatred. The Democratic National Committee expresses its hatred for Bernie Sanders and AOC saying the word socialism is the kiss of death for the Democrats. And yet, public opinion polls say that Americans prefer the word socialism to capitalism. The Democratic Party says, we don't care.
Socialism is much more popular than the Democratic Party itself. Trump is very unpopular, but the Democratic Party is even less popular than Trump. They're both extremely unpopular. The word socialism is more popular.
Yes, and it's likely that in the elections that happen next year, the Republicans will show up at the polls. The people who in the past would have voted Democratic simply will not vote because of the right-wing attack on any pro-labor, because of the right-wing pro-Wall Street attack. The Democrats are as controlled by the billionaires as the Republicans. And in fact, many of these Republican billionaires have also been Democratic Party billionaires too. You can back both parties.
Well, including Trump.
Yes.
Trump used to help fund the Clintons.
Exactly.